Good afternoon, everyone. We are here just to start this next session for Steftalks. The idea today is just talk about accelerating application modernization, share a little bit about our experience here in Stefanini, maybe how we are able to help and bring some insights on this process. Before starting it, just sharing this section is being recorded. It will be sent as a link by email and will be available on the Stefanini channel on YouTube too. And any kind of question or any comment during the session, please use the question section here on GoToWebinar, and at the end we have a reserved time just to answer and discuss a little bit about these points. Okay. Just introducing ourselves. Starting from myself, so I'm André Corrêa. I'm in charge of cloud offerings and cloud services here in Stefanini EMEA. Very connected with this entire journey on application modernization as part of the Stefanini portfolio. And here we have my colleagues Mihail and Cătălin. Please, Mihail.
Hi, it's really nice to have you all here. Mihail Mitru, I'm the application pre-sales manager for the application division of the Stefanini EMEA. Cătălin?
Hi, Cătălin Susan. I'm the applications practices leader in Europe, and I'm happy to meet you and share all that I can on our approaches to building and running applications, and especially application modernization. Please, André.
So thank you, Cătălin, thank you, Mihail. As a brief introduction to our session, so the idea here, I'll talk a little bit at this beginning about some of the challenges and the main points regarding the application modernization and some of the phases of this project and how to deal with that. And then we'd like to share different approaches on how to accelerate it, how to make this process even faster or reduce even the investments as part of this modernization. So I will start just talking a little bit about cloud technologies, some different use cases that we are able to take advantage as part of this process and make it feasible and improve the experience with the entire journey. Then we're gonna have two specific sessions on transforming people, culture, and actions to make this process even better to our developers team, but also to business and to the application holders. Then Cătălin will bring to us some insights and interesting topics on that. And at the end, we have the union of this entire content, when Mihail gonna share with us some ideas on how to deliver this kind of project, how to optimize it, how Stefanini has been transforming most of this journey. So it will be a very interesting section to connect all of these dots. Okay. Okay. So about our first topic, different situations and different aspects start or normally is the first trigger for this kind of project. When we are talking about legacy application, normally we are concerned about the experience, so how responsive are our application, or maybe how flexible it is just to integrate and bring new technologies on board, how to support our business expansion using most of these new technologies available in the market, or supporting new trends that we need to be adapted, or even how to improve the entire journey from the customer with our business, supported by application systems and the entire legacy portfolio. So when we look most of these challenges, we start discussing what is the main one, what I want to attack, how I'm able to solve on that. And when we enter in this kind of discussions, we are able to see that it's not a matter of a single application, it's not a matter of a specific topic on those applications. So we need to understand most of the entire ecosystem just to design this modernization approach. So when we are talking about it, we are talking about how dependent those applications are from the others, how to accelerate this process because I don't have a time just to design and implement the entire new application before starting getting the quick wins as part of this process, or even how to optimize resources, optimize costs, optimize security measures. So I need to deploy this new security policy and this new security environment, and how to do that. And for those that are planning a movement to cloud, or who is planning an entire transformation to the infrastructure perspective, you are able to discuss a little bit more on the TCO. So I need to optimize this TCO. And that's exactly the strategy that I'd like to suggest here. So with all those challenges on our hands, we need to understand how to run this process. And when we start to run this process, we are talking about discovery, prioritization, building a business case, planning, executing, and then transition to this new application. This entire process is part of this journey. And when we are running this process, we need to focus on how to transform the technology layer, but we need to focus on what is the right culture, what is the culture change, and what is the right process to make it feasible. So we need to combine this, and the idea here is how we are able to accelerate each of these spheres, and that's what we want to cover together today. Okay. Getting into the technology part. So for the technology part, how to accelerate, I'd like to take advantage of cloud. How to use cloud technologies just to help on that, and I'd like to share some practical use cases that we have been using in a lot of projects, and maybe it will bring some insight. So when we are talking about cloud, we always listen to things like, let's use microservices, let's implement this technology to accelerate the automation level, let's use cloud because it's scalable, it's fast to prototype, we don't need to invest on CapEx, we have a highly automated and highly usable environment, and all of those factors are true. But is that all? So this is all the aspects that we need to consider when we are talking about cloud. If we need to consider only these factors, why, for example, the cloud providers has those big portfolio of services on cloud? So if we look here at the Google Cloud portfolio, we have a lot of services. But we don't need to consider only Google. If we look at Azure, we have a lot of new services there too. If you look at Amazon, we have a lot of other services there too. So this whole ecosystem and this level of services and this amount of service will help us on accelerate this entire process, not only taking advantage of cloud approach, but taking advantage of ready-to-use services, taking advantage of a SaaS and PaaS conjunction of services just to make it run fast. And taking some examples and some use cases to help on that. For example, we are able to talk about identity management. So when we are talking about identity management, it was very common on previous and legacy projects, for example, to design a new single sign-on service just to be connected to that application, or even design an integration to a specific technology, or even create a new user ID for that specific application that was even more complicated in terms of user experience. And when we look at this kind of project, for example, we are able to bring this level of interesting connection to our customers, to our end customers. So use a ready-to-use, secured by design identity management system, already integrated, for example, with the main social medias, bringing information and technologies that they already hold as part of this signing process, improving the enrollment process. So most of you, of course, are already using a lot of applications in the market and a lot of services which are taking advantage of your credentials without the need of creating a new one. And by this way, you are able to build and scale to get different ways to connect to your application, but also making it highly scalable, improving the entire experience, and by this way, shifting this effort to the next phase of the project that you need to deal with. So it's interesting to have this kind of thoughts, and it's interesting to have this kind of insights when we are designing a modernization. But not only on the interface that you are able to shift your effort, you are able also to shift your effort, for example, on the testing perspective. So when we are talking about testing applications in the legacy way of developing, we used to use, for example, a lot of physical different devices on the office just to test your mobile application on different models, or even you try to use different emulators, but we know that emulator normally use a different technology or do not hold emulator for the entire hardware that you need to test, for example. And when we are looking at this cloud approach, we are able to see, for example, device farming on AWS or the App Center on Microsoft, where you have most of these common models available just to test your mobile on different situations. And here we are talking about testing on real devices and making it feasible since the beginning, improving your testing and automating the entire approach. So when you are modernizing, you need to think on the entire chain how to optimize things from the mobile testing perspective. And this is a very interesting case that we are taking advantage here in Stefanini, and it's improving a lot our productivity on this kind of testing. And the last case, that use case that I'd like to share here, we have, just a moment, please. It's not moving. Oh, yes. Here we have, for example, the entire DevSecops approach. So when we are talking about DevSecops, we are thinking on implementing an entire culture, but a culture that will require high level of automation on the entire CI/CD pipeline. So high level of automation on security validation, looking at the code, looking at the images, looking at the application in production. But we also need, for example, to automate and integrate it to different cloud providers. We need to accelerate the onboarding from the team on developing on this kind of platform and the reuse of microservices that we have ready to use on our library. So when you look at it, we are able to take advantage of this kind of implementation ready to use. And in terms of this implementation, Stefanini, we have the Infinity Deploy, our own cloud native platform that we developed just to improve the results. And here we are talking about improving the productivity from the development team in terms of 27%, or we are even talking about improving the cloud cost consumption, how to optimize it and use the best resources during the entire development process. So we are able to build and reduce an ROI for this modernization project. And the idea behind this entire use case is how to take advantage of a ready-to-use cloud-native platform, onboarding my new project and accelerate it. So only with these three use cases, I'm able to say that when we start a modernization project, I'm able just to shift the effort from the authentication process and the enrollment process, automate the entire testing on the mobile interface, and then improve the DevSecops capability in terms of technology, delivering the right platform for that. And combining these kind of use cases, you are able to accelerate your process and put that in the real world even faster. But let's explore a little bit more on how DevSecops are able to help us and make it possible as a possible accelerator. Please, Cătălin, up to you.
Thank you, André. Indeed, now that André has introduced us quite a bit into the technology aspect and all the accelerators that come from this area, let's go a bit over the way that people and culture are enabling us to do better application modernization and to do it quicker. Mihail, could you please advance the slide? All right. DevOps. DevOps is definitely at its best in application modernization. Application modernization is definitely the sweet spot for breaking down silos between development and operations. It is an environment where constantly there are new features that need to be brought in, there are updates, there is maintenance that needs to happen. There is an entire portfolio that is interacting with each other. At the same time, there is the operations side, keeping the lights on. These are production environments. These are systems that are at the heart of these enterprises. So DevOps is definitely born to address these issues. And this wall of confusion that was a long time ago separating development operations has been broken down over the last couple of decades, and nowadays it is quite rare to see any organization who is not at least starting to implement such a solution, even if they are not fully there. Can we move to the next one, please?
Cătălin, I think you can change yourself. I can do
I don't think I can. Thank you. And with DevOps comes Agile. Agile is what's powering the iterative incremental development of the solutions. Agile and agility in general are very well suited to application modernization, because as we can see in this graph, it's obviously just an example. Having the sort of big implementations in application modernization opens a lot of unfulfilled needs that would not be satisfied unless there are constant maintenance, constant updates, constant additions, and if you want, upgrades to the existing systems. Once in a while, of course, there are the larger jumps. However, application modernization is one of the areas where agility is at its best. Tools and automation are also among the low-hanging fruits and in application modernization. And all of this is very conducive to agile practices. Could you please move to the next one? All right. Highly visible outcomes. It's all about the image that the highest performance in this area are actually achieving. The numbers are not small. We are talking about amazing performance that elite performers in this area of automation, of DevOps, of agility can achieve. It is not something that every organization can do. However, it should give us something to strive for. It is achievable in certain organizations to have orders of magnitude, and I mean orders of magnitude, better performance when it comes to deployment, when it comes to the reliability of the systems in production, sometimes in substantial improvements in productivity, definitely higher compliance and higher adherence to standardization, and a marked decrease in issues, in failures, a marked decrease in the time that systems are unavailable. Can you please move to the next one? And people are always at its center. However, this dependency on people leads to another issue, if you want. It is a significant challenge to find the right people who are able to build these very advanced systems, these systems who leverage automation, who leverage artificial intelligence, who leverage the cloud, who leverage all of these pieces together to accelerate our application modernization. And everyone is feeling this pain. 52% of the respondents to one of the larger surveys on DevOps, organized by the DevOps Institute, are currently recruiting or planning to recruit within the next year DevOps roles and DevOps focused roles. And for most of them, this endeavor is extremely difficult or somewhat difficult. The way that we have to balance these very rewarding aspects, orders of magnitude improvements, and very challenging information is what makes it such an opportunity, let's say, to go into this direction of DevOps and DevSecops and modern practices. Because changing is hard, and changing is hard irrelevant of the company culture. There have been stereotypes that certain organizations are easier to change and some are difficult. What we have noticed over other surveys, actually it's from the same one, that no matter where on the spectrum of the organization type an organization is, changing the organizational mindset and accepting these changes, accepting an updated risk profile, accepting new processes and new ways of working is equally difficult in all of them. The challenges themselves might differ. However, being challenging is a constant when it comes to organizational change. However, the benefits are quite significant. And sometimes the benefits are not only nice to have, they are not only improvements over the baseline, they are also prerequisites for running the business. They are prerequisites for actually just keep.
Yes.
Could you please, Mihail, move to the next slide?
Sure.
Yeah. There are prerequisites for continuing our operation. Compliance is one such aspect, and it is one of the main drivers in application modernization. It is what's driving not only from the rules and regulations point of view, a lot of the application modernization initiatives, but also from the technology point of view, because all the compatibility requirements in this varied landscape are putting their pressure on the timeline for application modernization. PCI DSS, ISO, they are all requiring companies to stay abreast the latest security updates to make sure that all the elements that are used in their solutions are being supported, to make sure that all of these products are still within their updated cycles. And the update cycles are growing shorter and shorter. Nowadays, the supported life for many of the products are measured in months, 18 months, 24 months. Okay, there are very few who pass this 2 or 3 years threshold. And this is true across providers. It is true for corporate, let's say, focused companies, and it's true for open source solutions. So there is a constant pressure for this compliance. And the continuity that is promoted in this DevSecops approach is quite visible. Just like we could see in surveys, we could see here in very tangible information. This is a report generated from automatic data. This is a report generated by Veracode, who are tracking across all their cloud instances the way that their customers have been using the DevSecops pipelines, and especially the security testing aspects of it, but quality and coding guidelines and so on are enforced usually throughout the same pipeline, just like André discussed before. And we can obviously see who are the organizations. Well, they do not disclose names, obviously, but we can clearly see what is the cluster of organizations that are really doing DevSecops, that are really following through on making sure they have consistent quality, that they have continuous quality focus, that they focus continually on fixing issues, and who are the companies who take a, let's say, intermittent approach, basically releases timed with a lot of time between the releases, and the effect it has on the vulnerabilities. We can see that the highest ranking companies are going to 19 days median time to resolve, while the ones who are doing it the classic way, basically a few times per release, are taking 3 times as much time to fix vulnerabilities. And in the current landscape of security focus and on internet connectivity on all services, having any sort of vulnerabilities is definitely a problem. And in the next slide, we can see a bit how the perceptions, because when we talk about people, it's quite easy to just focus on the people who are doing the work. But there are a lot of stakeholders in the organization. There are a lot of stakeholders who are influencing the endeavors to do application modernization. And we can see that these expectations, besides speed, okay, everyone wants speed, but after speed, the focus jumps immediately on improved quality, on risk reduction, on aligning with business objectives, on customer satisfaction, which is basically still quality just from the perspective of the user. All of these expectations are very much in line with what was the expectation from these were around DevOps. These are in line with what was the expectation around agility. And these are in line with what are the expectations around automation and continuous integration, continuous delivery. We can talk about a modern development practice landscape, who is coming together in a sort of, if you want, recipe of how to build in a modern fashion applications. And Mihail can follow up and give you a more tangible implementation of these approaches.
Thank you, Cătălin. Thank you all. Indeed, like initially presented, I am the pre-sales manager of Stefanini application division, which gives me actually a more commercial role than my colleagues here. What I'm going to show you now is one of the new models we have put on the market, where we put together all the solutions which were mentioned by my colleagues before, and shift a little bit the perspective from a technical presentation to a more commercial one. What we have tried to do when we built the digital software factory engagement model was actually to put together all the components that will create a highly efficient, very flexible solution. Let me tell you a little bit about it. So this software factory model is basically a delivery organization, reorganized to deliver very modern, with very modern tools, fast products, and very fast in very short release cycles. What we have here, it's a holistic view of our services. As you can see on the left-hand side, we are adding in our proposal a business support layer, a technical architecture layer, and also the core of it, which is delivery. We have this holistic view. It's also flexible. We have a flexible approach, meaning that when we see here business support layer, we are adding in there some consultancy services, which we know are needed by our customers, but in different measures depending on the maturity of each of them. Yeah, one thing is to talk with a startup company, and another one is to talk with a very mature enterprise. The technical architecture layer, and you will see later on, adds a lot of capabilities and will actually, surprisingly so, help us create a new commercial model which is based on consumption and on the estimations which are made in the technical architecture layer, which means that we come to our customers with a solution where they pay based on what they actually get. Yeah, it's not based on a number of people or a time and material thing, and also allows us to have a commitment on what we place there underneath. To topple all this, there's also we have put in here the best practices that we have built by being an IT provider for more than 30 years, and also the newest methodology and modern delivery that was mentioned by my colleagues before. So at a glance, like I said, a holistic view. And let me just briefly walk you through some of the layers we have put here, so you understand a little bit what we have in here and why this helps. Yeah, the business support layer will help our customers to create and proper business requirement documents. How we do that? We run design thinking workshops, immersion and co-creation. We help them run MVPs. And you see on the right-hand side some of the roles that we put in here. You would be surprised that not all customers have access to UX specialists, or even so, it would be in their advantage to have all of those roles from one supplier. Another eccentric role that we have added may be growth hacker, and this is very related to this presentation here. A growth hacker actually looks at the analytics view of how a product is performing and dictates the new features based on that. The technical design layer helps our customer interact with the development division. Yeah, it's which we plan to have like a black box. Yeah, but in order to integrate very well, we need this layer where we have system architects and solution architects, and also it is in this layer where we do an estimation based on story points of the requirements we get, and those story points are actually used later on for commercial aspects of the proposal, which also comes with a delivery commitment on those. The operation layer, so basically what the customer gets, how we cook the products, as you can see here, is based on Agile. For small customers, we can use one Agile team, but for larger ones, we talk about SAFe, yeah, which is a scaled Agile methodology. We are using SAFe 5. And what you notice underneath is, yes, we have put in here in our offer the best thing, the way a IT supplier like us, very mature in delivering applications, is considering the best way or the most efficient way to deliver those things. Yeah. So the tools, proprietary tools, which were mentioned by André Corrêa at the start, and also on top of those process artifacts and a mature process library and reusable artifacts. Overall, the governance is lean, which means we ensure the best value for the buck. So that was about the digital software factory. And I think it's important because this actually shows how the application modernization has forced us as a supplier to change our delivery models. Yeah. And now in closing, I'll tell you a little bit on from my perspective. Being in applications, in application pre-sales, my division handles around 150 to 200 customer requests per year. I have done this for 10 years now, and I could say that when it comes to application modernization, I have noticed a trend, which is, of course, you can see it in Gartner or other ISG and other companies like that, consultancy companies, but it's really more tangible when you notice yourself. Historically, application modernization was driven by technology changes. As an example, what happened with Flex, and a lot of companies had to change their UI. The apparition of mobile devices, a lot of applications need to be rewritten, and new interfaces needed to be built for that. But not only that, we are talking also about the usage of drones in industry solutions or augmented reality solutions. All of those are technology driven. Yeah. Currently, this is also a factor. I'm not saying that things have changed overnight, but what I think it's important is that more and more companies think about the business drivers for application modernization. And why is that? Yeah. Basically, a lot of commercial models have changed from a sale per product, let's say, or per unit, SKU, to a subscription model, the one which was piloted by Netflix, and that we all know and see in a lot of things. One important aspect, and is related to the growth hacker, is the customers now, and you guys need a rapid pivoting model. You need to test a business model, and then if that fails, pivot back to something else. And this is where monitoring the profitability of the business is really important. Before we close, what I think it's important when it comes to modern application application modernization is for both customers and suppliers to look in the future. Yeah, this is not something that you can just tick after you have a project and you update the technology. It's something that will be ongoing. So what, as a conclusion, what I think it's really important to keep in mind after this presentation is that it's very important to have a product management mindset. So not only looking at the technology. We have seen the benefits which DevOps brings. I'm pretty sure everybody in this call knows those. And like Cătălin said, if you have it, I'm pretty sure you can still improve it. If you don't have it, it's an easy way to gain accelerations. From André presentation, I would mention that indeed cloud is no longer just for storing infrastructure in there. There's a multitude of services that actually help applications and application development processes to be much faster, yeah, and more reliable. And last but not least, to ensure quality and compliance to that. I hope that you have found our webinar interesting, and I'm here to say that with Stefanini as a partner, we will work together to find the best solutions for you. I'm really happy with our models for Software Factory, which address those things. Thank you again, and let's jump to questions.
Great, thank you, Mihail. Let me get from here. Just a moment, change it to questions.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get the first one. How much is cost-driven the current application modernization engagement? So, how much of cost-driven on this kind of project? Mihail.
So basically, if I understand correctly, is cost a factor in driving application modernization? Of course, cost is a significant factor because we run in a competitive economy, but I would say that is less and less than it was before, because now we need to consider also the cost of opportunity. So the cost of not changing that feature or changing that business model, or knowing how that is perceived by the market. The cost of not transforming, I would say it's way higher than doing the application modernization. I think when it comes to cost, all companies should provision costs for application modernizations long term, because technology will come with a lot of surprises for us. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Mihail. The next one, how do you prepare and train professionals for this kind of projects? Cătălin, probably this one is more suitable for you. So how to have these professionals in place?
Yeah, it is indeed, let's say, challenging to expect that people would be already prepared for these roles. So especially when we are talking about software factories and, if you want, internal excellence centers, we are focusing quite a bit on training, and not only theoretical training, but basically training on the job. Our guys are seeing a lot of projects, and having the critical mass to actually have people who are mainly dedicated to CI/CD, to DevOps, all of these aspects that are technology enabling, and also from the Agile perspective, to have coaches internally who can guide teams into the best practices and so on. That's pretty much the engine that is filling the. Of course, you have to start with good people. Okay, the baseline needs to be good. They need to have a good foundation. But in order to get to those 20% to make it really working in these modern approaches, that needs to be handled through training and internal development. And lessons learned sharing. It's all about learning by discovering step by step what works for our organization, not something out of a book.
Thank you, Cătălin. And it's important to mention how we have been investing in Stefanini on training professionals, on developing this kind of capabilities internally. The amount of trainings that we deliver to professionals, our training platform, even from there you are able to take a lot of content. So it's a common characteristic for every company. We have faced this a lot of years ago, and I think that we are very successful in saying that we have been preparing our own specialists, and we have been preparing the right skills for deliver this kind of projects as part of our main strategy. So I totally agree with those points. And the last question, how do you connect to business on modernization? How to make our team close to this kind of projects and understand the business? This question is too generic, but it's interesting. I'll just start from here, and maybe guys, you can compliment on me on that. As Mihail already said, we have a model exactly on designing the right squads for this challenge, getting our team close to the real pain points to be solved, and designing the right approach, focusing on the end customer. So when we are presenting these technologies and these methodologies, the entire message behind it is let's connect to the real value streams from the client. So that's exactly how I see we moving on that. Please, Mihail.
What I wanted to add, André, is that building this solution, we had this constraint in mind. And this is actually why we have here the business support layer. And I think this digital software factory model is something that also addresses the previous question regarding to training and the difficulties some of our customers face in finding the right talent to implement DevSecops solutions, or knowing that particular technology, or having the right product owner, or the UX, like I gave the example there. So guys, this is why we created this. This is what we are doing. This is something that, in my objective, would help a lot of customers not going through all the pain points and all the calibrations that we needed to do to deliver such services in an efficient way. And I'm really suggesting you guys inquire our business unit managers on how to contract this type of service, because it's really meant to help, yeah, or for yourself to try to transform your organization from a project delivery one to a digital factory with all the processes in there. That being said, I understand that there are no further questions. Maybe Cătălin, I hear you want to add something.
No, I would just agreeing with you. Application modernization is not a matter of if you want to do it or not. We have to be pragmatic. Everyone needs to do it because otherwise it doesn't work anymore. Be it applications, be it business processes, be it whatever, compliance. Things need to happen. And of course, sunken costs are a fallacy, as everyone knows, but costs are still something to be considered, as you mentioned before. Future costs, I mean. And aligning on business value is what giving you the reference to which to compare those costs, you know. Application modernizations are business cases like everything else.
We have a question. We have a question that I would also like to address. Let me just check here. How to start and make decisions that it's time to change core application towards new technologies designed. I think the nuance here is about the core, yeah. And I don't think the answer is just the technology is no longer supported. What is your opinion on this, Cătălin? How would you say? Is there a general answer to this?
I don't think there is a general answer. However, I think there are a lot of perspectives that need to be considered. Of course, there is the cost, and that includes the cost of non-compliance, for instance. But there is the cost of opportunity or the cost of disappointing your users that needs to be also taken into account. The impact any change has on the internal processes and the internal performance of a company. And also, let's not forget this one, the way an update is preparing your company for the future. Because a change might not be essential today, but it might be very important to have the readiness built into your organization so that when it becomes a requirement, it can go smoothly, you know? So this kind of forward-looking approach to application modernization needs to really be internalized, you know, because when you hear about something not being supported anymore and so on, that's already too late. You cannot be ready in time. You need to be a bit ahead of the curve. Not a lot, because that would mean a lot of R&D, a lot of expense. You would be the cutting edge, but you need to be balanced and a bit ahead of the curve so that your organization is ready to move forward.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Answering your question,
yes, I think you did. I would like to thank you for joining me and my colleagues, and wish you a great day. I hope you enjoyed the webinar. Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.